you?
I'm here.
Nice, beautiful lake. Nördünün sanırım ben görüşürüz. Kongres bölümünde Elnigar. Uygur cesibe geçirken dedesilerini şunda hoş bulduk. Biz şu Washington'daki Uygurlar var. Şunda hoş bulduk. Sizler kağıdıyla. Okşaşırız Uygurlar. هم مثل خوش بوده من چیزی hazır bir kanun var. Salamla ilgili salihlerle yaşamışsınız. Şurada yaş gelsin.
Hello, I'm Ina Shea. Welcome. Welcome. Joseph and Julie, I'd like to introduce you to the presidency. Excuse me. Коммунизм до нас
Thank you.
And we're here.
Morning. Morning. Thank you for joining us here this morning. My name is Andrew Bremberg, and I am the President and CEO of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. VOC was created by Congress and is charged with keeping the memory of the more than 100 million victims killed by communist regimes, keeping that memory alive, promoting awareness of communism atrocities today, and educating generations about the history, ideology, and legacy of communism. Today, we are honored to have with us Mr. Ovalbek Turyokun, known among his community as Joseph, and his family, who just arrived in the United States a few days ago, who will share his own personal account of being a victim of China's genocidal campaign in Xinjiang. Joseph was incarcerated for 10 months and subjected to torture and forced medical procedures. Last year, the US State Department determined that the Chinese Communist Party's actions in Xinjiang constituted that they were carrying out a genocide of the indigenous Turkic peoples within the province. This designation, that Beijing is in direct violation of the UN Genocide Convention, was based on a great deal of work done by VOC's own China Studies team. Thanks to the vigorous analysis by Dr. Adrian Zenz and the on-the-ground research by fellow Ethan Gutman, the world has learned the scope and scale of the CCP's atrocities in Xinjiang. These atrocities include mass extrajudicial incarceration, forced sterilization and abortion, forced labor, family separation, and more. And now we have the unique opportunity to hear from Mr. Ovalbek Turyokun, an ethnic Kyrgyz who has become one of the few people in the world to experience incarceration in a CCP concentration camp and now escape abroad. First, I want to extend my thank you on behalf of all of us here gathered here today to Mr. Churdakun and his family, not only to run from the clutches of the CCP and its police state, but to become a voice for the voiceless is a testament to the sheer bravery that few possess. You have made a great sacrifice for the sake of delivering justice for your people. It is well known that the tentacles of the CCP extend far beyond China's borders, and that its security services act outside of China to try to either capture or suppress and intimidate witnesses. The CCP will do all it can to silence dissent both in China and abroad. At VOC, we believe in putting the testimony of witnesses front and center whenever discussing the legacy of communism. The efforts of these brave souls provide a priceless resource for us and for future generations. The witnesses and their stories remind us that the atrocities being committed by communist regimes today and in the past are not just words on a page, but are real events that impact countless men, women, and children around the world. The testimony of witnesses has the power to change. And we hope after today, governments, corporations, and citizens around the world change how they interact and view the genocidal regime of the CCP. Thank you for joining us here to hear Joseph's incredible story today. Now allow me to introduce the man who made so much of this possible, Mr. Ethan Gutman, a fellow at the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. Ethan is perhaps the most daring investigator of the CCP's crimes around the world right now today. His efforts have brought to light information on forced organ harvesting in China and those who enable it abroad. Hearing of Mr. Churdakun, Ethan embarked on a daring mission to get him and his family safe to the United States. So once again, thank you, Ethan.
Thank you, Ambassador Bramberg. That's, I don't think I can live up to that, but I wanted to help you out a little bit. There's some press here, and Congressman Smith has just made it in, which is fantastic. So I don't know who I'm going to be introducing on that. But I wanted to say, you know, I find these names in foreign languages sometimes very difficult, and it was actually when we were in Istanbul that I sat down with the family and sort of said, can we work out some names, like just kind of easy names? And we did, over baklava and coffee, we sat down and did this, and you know, the baklava was very expensive, okay? So I would appreciate it if you could, I'm willing to do this, I'm just gonna call them Joseph, that's the father, and then Julie, mother, and Daniel, who's not here, unfortunately, but he's a great kid. And that's what I call them. So, having said that, please, they're okay with it, I think it's fair to say, and I'm okay with it, and you could be okay with talking about them that way too. I first heard about them, Joseph, Julie, and Daniel, from the Uyghur Christian Network in Central Asia. And my first contact with them was in an unfurnished Bishkek apartment in February 2020. I was interviewing nearly any Xinjiang camp refugee that I could find at the time. But Joseph was a series of demographic firsts. He's Kyrgyz ethnicity, Christian, crossed the Kyrgyz border with his family intact. But above all, three personal qualities actually jumped out at me. And the first was his understanding of the long arm of Chinese security, or maybe I should call it the long claw of Chinese security. No devices in the apartment. None were allowed. After an hour, thanks to Julie's gentle and persistent persuasion, Joseph allowed me to record him on an old dictaphone. Second, Joseph's precision. There are no scribes in these camps. None are allowed. But Joseph memorized the exact length of every hallway, the placement of every camera, the make of the camera, the room with no cameras, only special furniture. Incapacitated by mandatory drug therapy, Joseph cross-examined his cellmates every day on the exact conditions and output of the camp's factory, until one of them said to him, you're trying to form numerical estimates, aren't you? Stop it. You're going to get us all killed. Third, Joseph's decency. Central Asia is transactional. Joseph didn't ask me for anything. And when I was back in Kyrgyzstan in June 2021, coming from the South China, from the South, I should say, not South China, this time I received word that Joseph was in trouble. The Chinese had closed his bank account. The family was drifting from place to reduce visibility. And Joseph told me that on December 17th, his visa was up. Now, using numerical estimates based on my interviews with Uyghur witnesses in Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, let me unpack why a visa being up was potentially a death sentence. Before 2017, there were approximately 3,000 Uyghurs in Tajikistan. Using hard and soft methods, Chinese agents deported 85% of them back to Xinjiang, and only a tiny fraction were heard from again. Kyrgyzstan's Uyghur deportation rate is nearly identical. Before 2017, there were 4,700 Uyghurs. Today, there are less than 600. Now, I want to say a word about America. America is the first responder in these cases. Witnesses in Xinjiang, we lead the world into research into Xinjiang. And research leads to action. Not perfect action, but some action. Countermeasures against cotton collected by slave labor, the seizure of Chinese export wigs made from the shaved heads of Uyghur women. And the most credible research is hard data, government directives or satellite imagery, backed by witness testimony. Now, attempting to interview witnesses in Xinjiang is a fool's errand. It will have catastrophic human consequences for anyone you meet. But we can interview the rapidly diminishing pool of refugees in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and even Tajikistan, but only with the understanding this is no longer human rights work. From the Chinese perspective, this is spycraft. Now, perhaps for a guy like me or Connor, who will soon arrive, I would say that maybe creates a romantic echo of the great game. For us, it's still a world of manageable risk. But for our local fixers and for the refugees, it's a bit more like Anne Frank or The Sorrow and the Pity. This is a world defined by Russian surveillance, Chinese agents, and paid informers. China does not operate in Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan as if they were spies. They gnaw away at the borders, they construct military bases and transport under the Belt and Road Initiative. The Chinese act as slave catchers, as if these countries were simply extensions of the Xinjiang camp system, and many of my witnesses have already been deported. Some are doing hard labor, some are dead, and all we have left are the tapes of their voices. I'm talking about Kazakhstan here. I won't deny that when I saw Joseph's family in June, I had a premonition, a disconnected voice on a cassette tape. An orphanage, a woman hiding in a Kyrgyz village, another family ripped apart. So let me conclude on what we can do in Central Asia. Perhaps because the Silk Road region is so diverse and America is equally diverse. America is popular with ordinary people. In Central Asia, we're perceived as abolitionists. What is missing is credibility. One measure to restore that credibility is by establishing or perhaps re-establishing the possibility of selective witness protection and, when necessary, extraction. Because for those witnesses who wait in the darkness, the sight of Joseph, Julie, and Daniel in the land of freedom is a crack in the door. It's a glimmer of light, okay? So finally, prying that door open was a group effort. There are a lot of people in this room who made an incredible effort. I'm really grateful. I wouldn't have made it into Central Asia without incredible support from several patrons, particularly those who gave directly to Victims of Communism Foundation. When I could no longer operate securely in Central Asia, Connor Healy, who's finally arrived, stepped up alone, built a team, made a plan, and it worked. Bob Fu provided resources and was our extraction guru all the way through. There are 3 individuals based in Central Asia. I can't name them, but they risked their freedom to make this happen. For the long final stretch, I'm grateful to the congressional representatives who wrote to DHS and to 3 individuals in particular, Tori Reed, Piero Tosi, and El Nagar. Above all, I'm profoundly grateful to the U.S. State Department, and you know who you are. Thank you very much. I think we go to, is Congressman Smith going to speak? Or Piero. Okay, so Piero Tosi is, oh, it's Congressman Smith. I can't introduce him. I don't have anything written, so I'm sorry about that. He'll have to introduce himself. Is that right?
The family is going to speak. Yes.
Oh, goodness, I got it all wrong. Well, that's my fault. I apologize. You basically got the introduction. Please, Joseph, please give us your statement. Thank you so much.
Good morning. I am very happy to come to America and see all of your faces. And I thank you all the journalists for coming here and sharing the information to the world. And let me introduce myself first. My name is Oval Bekturdakon. I was born in Jungle, Xinjiang, Kızılsu, and I was born, I'm a Kyrgyz. Yeah, as you know, my English name now is Joseph.
Анда вакытка байланыштуу биз азыр менин башыман өткөн ушул тарбиялануу ордундагы ишти кыскача баяндап кетейин.
Yeah, now I wanted to share about my experience that happened back in China.
Мен 2018-жылы
In 2018,
10 февралда
in February 10th,
таң саат 7-ден өткөндө
early in the morning at 7 a.m.,
өкмөт кызматчылары келип үйдөн алып кетишти.
the Chinese government came home and they took me to the workplace.
Больницага алып барып текшертишти ден соолукту.
First they took me to a hospital and they checked my health.
Анан машина менен мени ошол тарбиялануу орду ошол жака алып кетишти.
And then we got into a car and they took me to a place where they call it like training center.
Баргандан кийин чоң дарбазанын астына токтолдук, анан айылдын сыртында.
When we arrived there, we stopped at the huge gate at the edge of the village.
Бийик чоң дарбазада кичине бүтөлгөн көрүнбөйт да ичи.
The gate was so huge that you wouldn't be able to see what's inside.
Анан мени алып келген кишилер кнопканы баскандан кийин тешигин ачып көрүп.
And the people who brought me there, they hit a button and somebody opened a tiny hole from the gate.
Биз киши алып келдик дегенден эшикти ачып мени киргизди.
And when they saw that I was brought there, they opened the door and they brought me in.
Киргенен баягы менин кийимдерим бүт баарын чечип калышты, бул бел уур баардыгын алып калды.
When I got in, they took off all my clothes, my belts, everything.
Бут кийимдин болгучуна чейин алып калышты.
And shoes and everything.
Февраль аягы сук болгондуктан мен ошол жерде турдум, тиги эмеде.
And it was the February and it was very cold.
Анан бир эки ошол жактан сакчылар келди.
And 2 guards came.
Анан келип мен мындай колумду салып туруп, ичкире алып.
And they had my hands back and they caught me and they took me to another room.
Артымдан дагы бир ошол 3 киши менен жеткизишти.
And 3 guards were walking by me.
Киргенден кийин атайын кийим таратышты, кийим кийдик.
When I entered, they gave me different clothes.
Бут кийимди бүт алып эме өздерінің жұмсақ бұт киім таратышты.
The shoes that they gave me was kind of a soft shoes.
Кіргеннен кейін қарады осындай темір есіктерден өтіп ішті қарай кете бердік.
And we went through many iron doors.
Жыт, сасық жыт іші.
And the smell was very bad.
Анан баягы эки жакка карап жүрүп отуруп бир жерге келгенде анан эшикке токтотту да мен.
And at one point we reached a door.
Анан тамга мени барып чаптап коюшту, карабайсың эч жакка деп.
And they told me to look at the wall.
Анан беш жерден темир менен мутталганда эшикти ача баштады, ачкычтар.
And door had 5 locks and they started open one lock at a time.
Анан эң акыркы эшикти тигилер мындай кнопка менен тияктан ачат экен.
And the last lock was like electronic, and somebody from the other side of the building has to push the button so that to unlock the last lock.
Кнопканы басканда эшик болуп жатат, анан башым баткандай ачылды.
And when that button is pushed, the door is open so narrow, like almost only my head would fit in that opening.
Анан бөлмөгө киресиз.
And they brought me in the room.
Ал кичинекей бөлмө.
It was such a tiny room.
23 кишилер.
In very small room, and in that tiny room there were 23 men.
Дааратканасы ичинде.
And the bathroom was inside of that room.
23 киши узун бир эмеде жатабыз. Кроватта. Бир 5-6 метрлик узун кроват.
And these 26 men we used to sleep on a kind of a bed that is long, and all of us we were supposed to fit in that bed like.
Ошо чегара район болгондуктан көп мындай кроваттарга жатыптыр, бирок бизде андай болгон жок. Ошо узун кроватка эле көп киши жатыр. Албетте баткан жокпуз, ошо батпагандар ушу туруп 2 саатта бирден алмашып октойт.
And in some, like they call it training center, but it's actually a concentration camp. So in some concentration camps, each man provided their own bed, but the center where I was, they provided us like a long shelf-like bed, and 26 men were supposed to fit in that bed, but it was not possible all of us to be on that bed at the same time, and we had to take turns, like 2 hours at a time. Some men have to stay for a couple hours while the other person is sleeping.
Анын ичинде көзөмөлдүү аппараты бар.
And there is cameras inside of the room.
Анын тамдын бетинде бир бар.
And on the wall there is another camera.
Ошонун үстүндө жазылып турат эме. Кишин. Окат.
Ошол камерада Hikvision деген камера экен. Ошол камера there was a Hikvision camera that was on the wall.
Бүтүн бою камера менен көзөмөлдөө ушу кичинекей бөлмөнүн ичи. Дараткана деле ошол эме камера көрүнүп турат.
Yeah, everything is visible. Even the bathroom, there is a camera that you can see everything in the room, what's happening. And the room was so tall, and there was one window. It was like on top, not on the wall, but it was high on top of the ceiling. And through that window, you would see the guards walking by. And the room that we stayed was very high. It was about 4 meters high. And on the top of the wall, there was a huge TV that they would stream like a teaching lessons to the inmates. And through that TV, they would stream different kind of programs, how China is developing, how it's a happy, nice country. And how the Chinese country is being more and more wealthy, more and more happy.
башына қалта кигізіп алып келген видеолар самолет.
And also, they also used to share the films like how the people who escaped China and how they are bringing those people back, putting like black socks bags in their head, and how they're bringing them back to China.
ошо биз дүйнөнүн ар кандай жерине таап алып келе алабыз.
And with that, they were saying that we can bring anyone from any part of the world.
деп ушундай коркутат да.
And this way, they would try to interrogate us. They would try to make us be afraid of them.
Партиянын мекендигин мактаган ырларды атат.
And they used to stream songs that would praise the country, the party, the communism country.
Анан тегил тамак баягы эшиктин тешигинен берген эмне тамак болсо ошону жейбиз.
And the food was given through a hole in the window, and whatever they gave us, we ate.
Видеодо комонтуп таандап жеп көрүнүп контуп жүргөн андай жок.
And-
Мен көрбөдүм да андай жок.
They try to show like people who are in a training center. They try to show that people are eating all kinds of healthy, good food, and people have a lot of choices to select. But it was not true.
Анан оорулар болду анын ичинде.
And the inmates, they lived. There were a lot of health issues.
Киргенден кийинки ооруларда.
And when I get in there, I got ill.
Албетте ооруган, мурда ооругандар бар, жаштан чоңдо ооруп, кан кысымы менен, жүрөк менен ооруган. Бирок көбү ошо киргенден кийин ооруду да.
Of course, some people, before they coming to the center, they had some health issues, but most of us, we got serious health issues as we got in those centers.
Дарыларды жедик.
They made us to eat different kind of pills, medicines.
Чайларды içtik, içkiristim мындай.
They gave us
Оорубайсыңар ичсеңер деген чай.
different types of herbal teas that they say that this would help our health.
Бияка да сайысты.
And gave us different types of injections.
Анан окутуу ар класстарга апарып окутуп атпайбы? Ал деле атайын баары кишини апарып окуткан кандай класстар деле жок. Атайын окутушка керек болсо, чоңдор келсе, анан атайын ошо жака окуйбуз. Болбосо ошо жака отурабыз да.
Most of the time we were kept in those small, tiny rooms. In TV, they are showing that when they are going through like a educational training, but that is not true. Most of the time we kept in that small room, and whenever they wanted us to go and take some lessons, they would.
Класстардын жан видеого чыкпайт да, ал анткени мугалим бул жерде турса, ортолукта могу жерде сетка бар. Темир. Ал видеого албайт, анан окугандар тиякта отурат. Мугалим биякта ал видеого чыгарбайт сетканы. Мугалим бул жерде тура берет. Чет элдер келип мында видео калса, муну чыкпагандай кылып, муну тартырбайт. Ал эмеден сетканын ичинен артта киши тартат. Анткени сетка көрүнүп калса класска окшой калат. Ошо.
Между учительницей и учениками есть сетка.
Okay, so there was a screen between teachers, like it's in the classroom, and that the teachers and the students would not see the teacher.
Окуганда да биз атайын кароочулар карайт, мында колдоруна калкан, найза, электрошок.
When we go to the classes to get some educational trainings, usually there are multiple guards that would guard us during the classes.
Аларды да видеого чыгарышпайт.
And they had spears and a different kind of tools, and those people are not videotaped. And of course, in the classrooms, there are many cameras. And the guards who were guarding us, they had different types of guns, The one of the gun I remember was it was like a gas gun.
ошондой ал классымдай бир окуу анан кийин чыккан эмес ошондой биз катуу сакчылардын милициялардын өзүндөсүндө отурабыз ушул жерде.
Yeah, the class was held in a very strict manner. We were not allowed to get up and walk around the room. It was very strict and heavily guarded.
анан жолбош орундуктар.
And also we had a tiger chair.
Мен болгон жерде эки түрдүү да андай жолбош орундуктар.
In a building where I kept, there are like different two types of tiger chairs.
Бирөөнүндө адатта терезеси бар үй.
The one room, it's like a house with a window.
Биякта жолбош орундук турат.
And here is one tiger chair.
Тилердин отурган орундугу.
And also there are more seats that the others would sit.
Артынан тосуп койгон уктаган бөлмөсү.
And there is a wall, like a wall, and people who could sleep on the other side.
Бул адатта жолбош орундук суракка тарткан жер.
It's like a regular room when the inmates are questioned, asked questions.
Анан дагы бар жолбош орундук атайын ичине киргенде бөлмө.
And there is another like small rooms, and it is each room has a tiger chairs.
Бир кишилик бөлмө.
And the rooms are so small that only one person can fit in it.
Ал үйдүн ичи атайын жумшак материал менен капталган.
The walls are covered with a soft material.
Кыйкырса, кыйналса доош чыгып алат, чыкпайт.
That material would absorb like a sound, and if a person like screams, cries, no one would hear from the outside.
Анан дерезе жок анда.
There is no window.
Мындай свет жок.
No light.
Капкара.
Very dark.
Эшиги капкалың мондай.
And the door is very thick, iron.
Жапканда эчтеке болбойт.
When you close the door, you can hear nothing.
Бул мен болгон жерде ошо.
This is how it looked like in the center when I was, where I was.
Анан эме жөнүндө да айтып кетейин.
Also, I wanted to share about.
Кийин мындай батыш мамлекеттердин басымынан болду окшойт. Жасалма сот ачылды.
Probably it was by the influence of Western countries that they founded kind of like courts.
Анда өздөрү эле жазып койгон сен момундай кылмышкерсиң деп өзүнө ат коюп жазып койгон.
And in that court, actually, they would assign like a violence or criminal to any inmate.
Анан келип туруп колуңду бастырып, бармагыңды бастырат.
And they say that, okay, you did this kind of crimes, and they write it for you, and they will force you to sign and put your fingerprints on that paper.
Ал сот 3 мүнөттөн 5 мүнөткө чейин түгөйт бир киши.
And the court was lasted only 2 to 3 minutes.
Ошондой бат эле сотто ачып туруп эле кайра алып киргизди.
So they quickly processed like each person.
Биз бөлмөдө кишилер баарыбыз чыгып соттолуп келдик, чыктык.
So all people in the same room, we went through that court process.
Көбү тиги кабыл албайт, мен мындайды кылбагам, бирок кылды деди да аны. Сен ушуну кылгансың десе, нааразы болгондорду, ыйлагандарды кайрадан мындай 6 айдан бир жолу ыйласаң 6 ай кошулат, 2 жолу ыйласаң анда 1 жыл кошулат. Ошондой жазалар.
Whenever if you oppose of the crimes that they said that I did, and if I start cry or oppose them or object them, they will give me like even more like 6 months to stay in the center.
Эмне деп ошо сени кылмышкерге ошого ыраазы болуп, колуңду коюп, унчукпай жашашың.
You have to accept whatever crime they assign to you, and you need to be accept and be happy and just live there peacefully, quietly.
Анан мага да сот ачылды.
And they did a court process for me as well.
3 мүнөт.
And it was only about 3 minutes.
Мен баягы никем Кыргызстандан болгондуктан.
Because I married to a lady from Kyrgyzstan.
Sen çetelmenen üyleniyorsun.
They said that you married to a foreign woman.
Mekenini жақсы көрбейсің.
You do not love your own country.
Sen mekenшілдік көзқарасың төмен.
You do not like your country, and your love to the country is low.
Анан жаққа қара тізмедегі мемлекеттерге барғансың 26.
And the Chinese government has countries that are blacklisted in.
Kırgızstan, Kazakistan, Tacikistan,
Some of them are Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan,
Syria.
Tajikistan, Syria,
Türkiye.
Turkey.
Ушуга барсаң эле сен күнөөкөрсүң кеш керек 10 жылга.
And if you ever visited these countries, then you will be in jail for 10 years. 26 years.
No,
26 countries.
Oh, 26 countries are in the blacklist.
Анан партия аябай жакшы сени кеспейт, бирок ушул тарбиялоо орунда бекер үйрөнөсүң, тарбияланасың деп канчалык отурушуңду айтпайт.
They do not say anything at how long you're gonna be kept in that place, and they just say that the Chinese party, the Communist Party, is graceful, is a good country, and you're just gonna stay here, and they will never say how long I'm gonna be here.
Анан сыртка чыгыш үчүн мен отурган ошо бөлмөдөн сыртка чыгыш үчүн мени сакчылар алып басат.
If when I need to go outside, the guards, they lead me.
12 темир эшиктен
And I need to go through 12 iron doors.
ар бир эшикте 2ден кароочу.
Each door has 2 guards,
Видео көзөмөлдө.
and cameras are everywhere.
Артта дагы бир ээрчип жүрөт.
And another guard is walking behind me.
12 эшиктен өткөндөн кийин талаа көрүнөт.
And when we go out through 12 doors and there is an open field,
13 эшик жамин биринчи кирген жол эшик.
this is and then there is a 13th door where I came in. It's where the huge gate.
Ушундай видео көзөмөлдө айтта.
So the area is heavily guarded.
Анан бул кыскача бир баяндалышы.
It's a very short version of my story.
Мен баарын айтканга бизде да силерде убакыт жок.
Yeah, because of the time I'm unable to tell everything.
Анан мен чыккан убактым ошол тарбиялануу ордунан үйгө келген убакыт.
And now I was let go home. I came home.
2018 17 декабрь. Түндө алып келишти.
I came home in 2018, December 17th. They brought me home at night.
Түндө мындай баарыбызды коюп берип кеткиле деген жок, аны эшикти ачып үйгө кет дебеди.
They didn't let us just opening the house and say go.
Анан бирден түндө алып чыгып,
They took the inmates one person at a time at night.
мен ошол үстүмдөгү лагердин кийимин чечип алып,
And before they take us home, they took my camp clothes.
ичимдеги бир сыйра кийим менен машинага отуруп түндө алып келишти.
And they just gave me like inner garments, and with that inner garment, they brought me home at night.
Анан кол койдурушту.
And they had me to sign a paper.
Бул лагер ичинде болгонду аялыңа да айтпашың керек.
And they forced me not to say anything, whatever happened in the camp, even to my wife.
Анан актай баракча эчтеке жок.
And they gave me like white paper, blank paper.
Ошого кол койдуруп бармак бастып.
They had me to sign and do my fingerprints.
Үйгө түндө келдим ошо.
I came home at night.
Үйгө келсем да көп киши ошо өкмөттүн кишилери үйдө экен.
So when I arrived home, there were many government officials at home.
Баламды көрдүм.
I saw my son, my wife.
Аябай жакшы.
I was so happy to see my family.
Анан үй бүлөлүк камак башталды да.
Once I came home, there was another kind of prison at home.
Koluma GPS salıştı.
They put me in a house arrest and they put me like GPS like watch on my wrist.
Al saat salgandan atayın açkıcı var. Özdür uluttap ketip açkan bolboydu.
And that wrist, the watch GPS, they put it in your hand and they lock it as a special key and they will keep the key for themselves.
Al bunday silkendirilet. Saat.
Um,
Soksa bolboydu da.
you cannot like hit the watch.
Al vaqtı görsedet saat kokşosu de.
It looks like a watch. It has it can show you the time.
Mana al çankınday. Biz bir oturup zarettiniz.
And it runs on a battery.
Аны өчүрбеш керек, эгер эки жолу өчүп калса колуңда саат. Анда биз кайрадан ошол тарбияланга
You should never turn off that watch. If it happens at least twice, then they will put you back to the prison.
Ал аябай акылдуу саат.
That's very smart watch.
Ал орун белгилейт. Андан башка эмендерлейт да мен жакынсыз. Канчалык батарейкасы бар. Тияктан милициялар эгер аз батарейкасы калса, мен аягына телефон чалып айтат. Өчүп калгалы калды. Зарядташ керек. Тиякта туруп билет менин колумда.
And even they know how much battery my watch has, and if it's running low, then they call and they say that I should charge my watch.
Бул андан башка күндө келчү кишилер бар. 3 маал.
And people, they have people who come 3 times a day.
Сүрөткө тартат.
They take a picture.
Эм күзөтөт да алар келип эмне колдонуп атасың, эмне иштеп атасың. Ошол үй бүлөлүк турмуш. Үй бүлөдө мен кыскартып айтайын, үй бүлөдө камакта мен 8 ай болдум.
And I was in a house arrest for 8 months.
GPS-те 6 ай.
And they put the GPS for 6 months.
Силерге рахмат.
Thank you for coming.
Мен шаһар келишине жардам берген. Кудайга шүгүр.
And I thank God that He brought me and my family safely here, and thank you for people who helped me.
Өкмөтүнө рахмат.
I thank the American government.
Колдоп, кубаттаган банкы, Ethan Канага рахмат.
And I thank Ethan Connor for supporting me.
Анан отурган силерге да рахмат берген убактыңыз.
And thank you for your time.
Just come. We have one more round of applause for him, please. Thank you. It was fantastic translation too. Had a great time. Thank you so much. At this point, I'm going to open it to Congressman Chris Smith, who served in New Jersey's 4th District since 1981. He's a senior member on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he serves as co-chairman of the CECC. He's co-chairman of the Commission on Security and Cooperation in Europe, co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission, and he's also co-chair of the Victims of Communism Caucus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and what a privilege to be with Joseph and his wife, Julie. I frankly, and I think I look at Michael Horowitz and so many others, Ambassador Bremberg, who is a tremendous human rights leader, a former ambassador, and now with Victims of Communism, Christine Olney. Thank you for singling out Piero Tazzi, who is a tremendous staffer, worth his weight in gold. And thank you, Piero, for your work. And just so many Bob Fu, who I've worked with for 25 years on human rights in China. I mentioned Michael Horowitz and Ethan Gutman, the work that he has done. You know, at a time when we need accuracy when pressing on human rights issues, You know, this man absolutely insists on telling the truth with no exaggeration, and that makes a difference. On organ harvesting, for example, he has done landmark work on that. And of course, the victims of communism, what a gap you fill in ensuring that the world never forgets the past, what is rife with mass murder, from Stalin to Mao Zedong, to the present, which we see in North Korea, China, and so many other places. You know, at a time when we have a genocide occurring in Ukraine by Vladimir Putin, we also have a genocide of horrific proportions occurring in the People's Republic of China by Xi Jinping. It is all his genocide. He ordered it. He said, show no mercy. We have documents where he has made it so clear as to what his end game is, either destroy the Uyghurs and the Kazakhs and the Kyrgyzstan people and others who he sees as inferior, or bring them over to the other side and brainwash them into accepting the Chinese model and his terrible vision for the world. So when Joseph and Julie and their son Daniel made their way to freedom, on behalf of my colleagues in Congress, welcome. We're so happy that you're here, not only for your own personal freedom, which you absolutely deserve, 10 months in the gulag of Xinjiang and suffering the way you did. I mean, the Tiger Chair. We've had hearings on the Tiger Chair, and when I first read and heard about it and heard people who had suffered from it previously, I almost couldn't believe how barbaric it is that a guy like Xi Jinping and his Chinese Communist Party continue to promote and use it, and then injections as you got and all the other things in order to try to destroy you. I am in awe. We are inspired. I know every one of us here are inspired by your courage, by your faith, by your commitment to human rights, and by your very powerful and very keen powers of observation. To bring any successful legal action, it takes documented information, which you now have an inside look that can provide to prosecutors. And the time will come, it should have already come, to set up a tribunal, whether it be an ad hoc or whether the UN General Assembly, which has the power to do it. We know that the Security Council can't do it. The veto power is there from Russia and China. But the General Assembly, tomorrow, if it wanted to, and if it had the will to, could convene a tribunal to hold Xi Jinping and others in that monstrous Chinese Communist Party to account for their crimes, for their genocide against so many. So again, your information, your leadership is critical. And again, at a time when we are all focused on Ukraine, and that's important, we can't take our focus off what is happening every single day in the concentration camps in Xinjiang, and to people just like you. Thank you for bearing witness to the truth, for being here, and we look forward to hearing from you mightily in the future to hold Xi Jinping to account for his crimes against humanity.
Listen, next up is Connor Healy. He's a government director at IPVM. Nobody knows what that means. But it's a research organization on surveillance with particular focus reporting on China's use of technologies. I met Connor Healy at the Uyghur Tribunal in London, and he is also the brother I never had.
So first of all, I'm living out of a suitcase right now, and I didn't have room for a suit, so I'm sorry I don't look as good as the rest of you. Thank you, Ethan. There's relatively little I can add to what Joseph just told us and to his story, so I just have a few thank yous to say and a few brief points. Thank you, Ethan. Had it not been for meeting you, I would not have had the opportunity to help this family, which has been the greatest privilege of my life, truly. Ethan, thank you also for giving me high blood pressure at the age of 25. Those who know Ethan know that that's a loving jab. Many others deserve thanks, in particular my colleagues at IPBM and our founder for letting me momentarily, pause much of my work in order to work on this case and to help this family. And also our head of operations, Dawn May, who is sitting here, for being an amazing sounding board throughout this. Thank you, of course, to all the members of Congress and the State Department, once again. And to those certain others who can't be named, you know who you are. Thank you very much for what you've done. Some people made incredible sacrifices during this process, and I'm truly very grateful. And of course to Joseph and Julie in particular, for their courage and patience in navigating this complex process that has ultimately brought them to the United States. IBVM mostly focuses on surveillance companies, and Joseph went into some detail about the level of surveillance inside that camp, and specifically named a company called Hikvision, a company that we spend a great deal of time investigating. There is an enormous amount of evidence of their ties and direct participation in the genocide in Xinjiang. This is not just a passive supplier. These are designers of the systems that oppress families like that of Joseph's and Julie's. To do business with a company like this, or with companies like Tiandi, which sells a smart interrogation solution that comes with a tiger chair, like the one Joseph was tortured in repeatedly, is nothing less than to do business with those who are perpetrating the genocide. There is no difference. And the United States is actually doing something about this. There's been a lot of work putting into banning these companies from selling to the federal government or from selling here at all. And as a Canadian, really the final point I want to make is that other countries need to start to take the same action and do better. Not just in terms of dealing with these technology companies, but in terms of helping people like Joseph and Julie. Many people think of Canada as a welcoming place for the world's vulnerable people. But it turns out that was not the case here. I asked the Canadian government if they would take this family in, and they told me to talk to the State Department. As it turns out, they have specifically declined to create a path to help refugees fleeing Xinjiang, and so have many other countries. And I think they should be ashamed of that. And thank you to the United States for taking the right approach and doing the right thing. All right, that's all I had to say.
Bob Fu is founder and president of China Aid, an international NGO focusing on advancing religious freedom for all in China. He's author of the book God's Double Agent. The Chinese prefer to call him God's Smuggler. But Bob Fu was our guiding light throughout this process. And I'm so pleased he's here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ethan. Good morning. I want to thank your team, Ethan, Connor, and of course the great VOC team and Ambassador Andrew, and for your leadership on really exposing this horrendous brutality and persecution. And ladies and gentlemen, as Congressman Chris Smith just mentioned, I want to also thank Congressman Smith. This guy has been serving this country, of course, his district, since 1981. And this morning, he got up at 4 o'clock, just like to take, driving all the way from New Jersey to come here for a 30-second speech. And you should speak more, I think. And I think, thank you for your tireless leadership in helping advancing freedom. The Communist Party of China has committed genocide, ethnic cleansing, and really crime against humanity. Long time before we designate that in 2020. And Xi Jinping, I think himself, should be held accountable for directly orchestrating this genocide. Back to 2017, when the world literally not even aware the existence of the concentration camps. I remembered I got a phone call from one of my reporters based in Hong Kong. He said a guy, a partner organization from Kazakhstan, led by, whose name is Sergej Bilash. And I'm fortunate, privileged to be working with him, and he's now with us today. And he basically told our reporter, said, we have found so many the Uyghurs, Kazakh families suddenly disappeared. Village, literally the whole village disappeared at midnight, taken away by the Chinese security police. So I said, okay, how can we find more information? He said, send all your reporters. So we founded first kind of investigative reporting, sending our Hong Kong reporter to Kazakhstan and met with this man. The man, I think he should really be credited as the first man really broke the story of the existence of concentration camps, who has documented more than anyone else about the atrocities and the brutalities of the concentration camp, the persecution of Uyghurs, Kazakhs, of course, Kyrgyz and other religious minorities. So we issued a story of 5 or 6 different stories, basically interviewing the family members of those who lost their father, mother, children. You can go back to ChinaAid.org or .net, or Chinese version of the website, to see these stories back to 2017. And then last year in February, of course, we successfully rescued at ChinaAid one of the first victims from the the concentration camps of a Kazakh family, Guzira, and her husband and their 5-year-old daughter, and of course the Sergej Bilash himself was also there at Dallas International Airport in Texas. So for the first time, we learned under the concentration camp, there is a systematic Communist Party orchestrated, government organized, systematic prostitution going on inside these concentration camps. We have Guzira as the witness, basically telling us the story. So when I heard my brother Joseph talk about, this tiger chair, this little, like a dark room, windowless, only can hold one person, I think the world should be reminded what had happened back to 1940 under Hitler's Germany. I think what had happened during that time, maybe we have not kind of documented well enough to see or hear that gas lean from that chamber. But Joseph's story is, unfortunately, is not the first one. It's maybe not even the most unique one. I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, just this morning I received very credible information showing in at least 4 other Christians in Xinjiang. One of them, his name is Mehmeti Abdullah. He was released back home on March 20th, 2021 from his prison after serving 5.5 years. in his camp. But then he was rearrested, taken away after only staying at home for 3 days without even having the time to tell his wife of what happened to him. He was taken away. 6 months later, his wife got a phone call, said, he's a Christian, Mehmeti Abdullah was resentenced to 13 years. The prosecutor or the prison said, oh, they found out his first sentence was too light. He needs to be resentenced for another 13 years. I think the world today, with what's going on, of course, in Ukraine, we can never forget there are still 1 million, maybe even more, are still inside these camps. Perhaps they are still in these chambers. They are waiting for us to hear them, and if possible, when Ethan told me this Christian family, waiting to be extracted, I said, whatever the cost, let's do it. If we can rescue this Kazakh Muslim family as a Christian organization, certainly we should do to love our brothers and sisters like Joseph, Julie, and Daniel. Thank you very much. Let's work together. Thank you.
I just wanted to say that I think Bob Phu's remarks about Serikjan Bilash and Atajur are correct. They were way ahead of the game in 2019 when I was in Kazakhstan. And one of the things I asked Serikjan was, I said, what do you know about Tajikistan? He said, Ethan, I don't know. We've been thinking about going out there, but we just haven't quite put it together. And that leads me to somebody who did put something together, and that's Rodney Dixon, who's flown in from London. He's a barrister specializing in international law at Temple Garden Chambers in London and The Hague. His legal team submitted a complaint to the International Criminal Court, the ICC, prosecutor in July 2020, asking them to open an investigation into the matter of Tajikistan and disappearances and deportations of Uyghurs in Tajikistan. And he's put in further evidence, I think he'll be talking about that, that he submitted to the prosecutor in June 2021. We're very glad to have him here. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Today is a historic celebration for the bravery and the fortitude shown by Joseph and his family, together with all of those who assisted the family to be here, from the US government to all of the organizations, to Ethan and Connor. Just the sheer determination and guts that they showed to pull this off is remarkable. But it is also a hollow feeling, because as has been emphasized, can you believe that as we stand here, there still has not been a single investigation and prosecution of any of the mass atrocities that have taken place. It's quite staggering. And that's where hopefully we come in, because the International Criminal Court in The Hague provides one avenue. Yes, there are others. There could well be a specialized court through the General Assembly as a subsidiary organ. But the existing body at the moment, the ICC, provides a golden opportunity to take up the investigation and prosecution of this case. My legal team, on behalf of the East Turkestan government in exile, and a number of Uyghur and other organizations and Uyghur victims, have filed this complaint through a special procedure at the ICC to the ICC prosecutor, Karim Khan, asking him to open an investigation under his powers. And the way you do it is you put together a whole lot of very important and compelling evidence which shows a reasonable basis to take up the case. Of course, you've also got to establish jurisdiction. everyone always says to me, well, China's not signed up, so where do we go? Well, the answer is quite straightforward. A number of countries, including Tajikistan, which is a neighboring country, and others like Cambodia, Afghanistan, are signed up. And we have evidence that Chinese agents are going there, as they have done in Joseph's case to neighboring countries, going there to arrest persons, round them up, bring them back to East Turkestan, bring them back to China, and disappear them, put them in camps they never heard from again. Or people like Joseph who've managed to get out because of coercion of China and get to countries that are signed up. So persons going both ways. Of course, it's a vicious cycle because as they go out, they get hunted down again and brought back. And that continuing crime, which takes place partly on ICC territory, gives the court jurisdiction. It's not an unusual criminal law principle. It happens all the time in our national jurisdictions. If you bring drugs over from Canada into the US or the other way, either country can arrest you and the court has jurisdiction over the whole crime. So it's not only what takes place in Tajikistan or Cambodia, the continuation of it into China, even though they're not signed up, is part of the same crime. And that gives the court jurisdiction. It's a well-established principle in national law and international criminal law. Now we have the Rohingya case in Myanmar and Bangladesh, which we are relying upon. So in short, there is jurisdiction, there is evidence, and Joseph's evidence now is going to be vital in providing more first-hand inside information on what has been happening in China and in neighboring countries. He will be able to provide evidence, he's only given a snapshot of it today, about what he saw and heard in the camp, about what was said about places like Tajikistan and persons who were there from those countries as well. That is vital link evidence to establish jurisdiction and to show that the court has a proper basis now to start this investigation. So we will be submitting that very soon to the ICC. We'll be calling on the court to take action, and our main call today is to ensure that we are all united in saying that there must now be an investigation and prosecution. We've seen how world leaders have come together across the globe and called for an international prosecution in relation to Ukraine, and rightfully so. But they should at the same time be calling for precisely the same action in relation to China. It's impossible to make a distinction. It can't just be one law for the victims of Ukraine, and rightly so, but then a different law for the victims of China and the neighboring countries. There has to be a consistency for us to be able to say that the rule of law applies equally to everyone. There has to be the same approach taken in relation to calling for an international investigation and prosecution in China as well. And it can be the ICC, as has been happening with Ukraine, even from countries who are not signed up to the ICC. You don't have to be signed up to support the court, and where the court has proper legal jurisdiction under international law, allow it to play its role. And you can look at other mechanisms as well. It's not a competition. The main thing is to ensure that the victims have a path to justice and accountability. So that is our carrion call today, that what is happening in Ukraine, and it is a proper response, should be exactly the same for China. The ICC should be starting an investigation based on the evidence we have, based on Joseph's evidence that is going to come, and many more. We are hoping that this vital breakthrough, which has been so overwhelmingly supported by the US, by a number of organizations, will encourage other persons to come out, to come forward, and to give evidence. For too long, people have thought there's no door to justice here. Nothing can be done. We'd rather just keep quiet and protect our families. But now they can see there are ways out. There is a mechanism where your evidence can be given. And it doesn't have to be done publicly, as in Joseph's case. I mean, it's very powerful when it's done this way, but it can be done confidentially as well. So we are hoping that this will provide reassurance to more persons now to come forward and to be able to build that case to be able to then where we have sufficient evidence and we believe there's enough, launch a prosecution. We need now, in 2022, more than ever, to redouble our efforts and to galvanize our legal muscle and steel to ensure that those persons who are accused of the most serious crimes of our generation are put on trial. Thank you very much.
Can I ask the family to come on stage? And Connor Healy, I've got some more blood pressure work for you. Connor will be managing the press, and that's it.
Thank you. So, does anyone have any questions? Jamie.
Hi there. Good to see you again. I just wanted to ask if you could provide more details on the herbal teas and the pills and the injections that you mentioned in your initial remarks, Joseph. And if both Joseph and Julie could elaborate on their experience in Kyrgyzstan with the harassment of Chinese security officers and just describe what happened there.
Excuse me, can you repeat the second part of it?
Sure, yeah. Can they also provide details on how Chinese security officers harassed them and tried to repatriate them to China while they were in Kyrgyzstan?
жақсы
Second question.
içken çaylar bulsun, o açtık.
Yes, we were given different types of tea.
Алар эмне чай айткан жок, бирок
They didn't tell us what
Sarı.
kind of herbal tea they were.
сары түстөгү чайлар
I remember the color was yellow.
дары жыттанып турат.
It smelled like a medicine.
Ошо дары ичсеңер оорубайсыңар деп ичирди.
And they gave us saying that if you drink this, you will not get ill.
Экинчи Кыргызстандан бияка чыгуу жөнүндө.
Таблеткалар жөнүндө.
Таблетка жөнүндө, ал жөнүндө эми алар ар кандай таблеткаларды берет. Ал деле ошондой дейт да оорубайсыңар жегиле ичкиле.
And regarding the tablets, the pills, it was the same. They didn't tell us what kind of pill and what is that for. The only thing they told us it's good for you, it's good for our health.
Ошол ал дарыларды берди, ал сөзсүз ичиш керек, сен ичкенден кийин кетет да. Ичирбей туруп кетпейт.
And when they give
Жутуш керек.
us the tea and those pills, you have to drink or eat while they are there. If you do not, then they will not leave you.
Ороза айында мусулмандар эчтеке ичпейт, бирок ороза айында ичирди ошондой нерсе.
During the Ramadan months, the Muslims, they do fasting, but they force them to drink, to eat during that time.
Аны баары карап турат, киши да, милиция да карап турат, үйдө да карап турат, сөзсүз ичкенде гана анан башка жакка чыгасың.
Yes, you have to eat or drink the tea, otherwise, you are watched all the time and you will not be left alone unless you take it.
Ар бир кишide билген стакан бар, анын үстүндө биздин атыбыз бар, ага куят толтура ичип турат.
Every person has his own cap and they put the tea in the cap and you have to drink it.
Билгеним ушунчалык.
This is how much I know about them.
Экинчи суроо боюнча, ооба ал жерде Бишкекте турганда бизге телефон чалуулар болду, элчиканадан.
Yes, and the second question is when we came to Kyrgyzstan, we got multiple phone calls.
Мурда келгенде иштеп жүргөн банк карттар 21-жылы иштебей калды.
And our credit cards, they stopped working. They blocked them.
Мурда болгон нерсе болбой калды демек, ал мага карата бир деме жасап атат. Yani
So
şunu bildim.
when they blocked my card, I realized that the Chinese government is doing something.
Bilmiyorum şunu.
This is what I know.
Sorry, I don't know your name.
Yeah, Nina Shea. I wanted to ask about the, thank you, Nina Shea from Hudson Institute. I want to ask about when you entered when you were brought to the concentration camp, you were screened for your health, you said. Could you describe what that was about? How did they screen you for your health?
Жана башында айтпадыңар, жанагы концентрационный лагерьге бергенден мурда силерди больницага алып ден соолугуңарды текшердик да, ошондо ден соолукту текшерген боюнча кандай эмне элерди кылышты, кантип текшеришти.
And also, could you describe the effects of the injections and the tea or pills, if there were effects?
Жана экинчиси, жана силер ичкен чайлар, дарылар силердин ден соолугуңарга кандайдыр бир таасир бердиби, эмне болду ошолорду ичкениңиз?
Жақсы.
Good question.
Birinci biz больницаға алып барғанда,
First, when they took us to the hospital,
ден соолук сүйүнө түшүш керек dedi.
they said that we need to go like health screening.
Анан алар мен барып очередке турган жокмун. Ал мени алып келген милициялар өзү барып очередке турду.
And the policemen, they took me and they put me in a waiting line.
Анан бир анкета берди, аяктан.
And they gave me a paper to fill it out.
Ал анкетаны мага көрсөткөн жок.
They did not show the paper to me.
Üstüne bir mындай bir белги коюп койду анкетанын üstüne.
They put like a sign on the top of the paper.
Ошо анкетаны алып барып очередсиздер бергенде мени бат эле очередсиз текшерди.
And they said that take this paper, and when they see the sign of the top of the paper, they will let you go first.
Адатта текшерүүдө больницада аябай кыйын, очередке көп токтоп очередин келгенинен анан барасыз.
But usually when you go to hospitals, there is a long line and you have to wait until you get to see the doctor.
Алар ушу үстүндөгү белгине карадылар, бүт баары мен очередсиз алып кетти.
And when they saw the sign on the top of the paper, they just let me to be first.
Мен билгеним ушундай. Больница боюнча.
Yeah, this is about the hospital. This is what I have.
Анан чайлар боюнча ичирген дагы.
Силерди кандай текшердик да, эмне болуп текшердик?
Ошону атайын. Анда кан алды.
They took a blood from my vein.
Жүрөк текшерилди.
Checked my heart.
Давлениени өлчөдү.
Checked my blood pressure.
Эми адатта баягы больницадан өткөн атайын текшерүүлөр бар.
Yeah, it was like a regular checkup when doctors usually do when they are intaking the patient.
Текшерүү ошондой.
It was like that.
Кичик тара, чоң тара. Алар бар, аналар. Эми ичкен дарылар жөнүндө, ал ичкен дарылар жөнүндө ичкенден кийин ооба ооруду. Ичкен дарылардан кийин мында денеге бүдүр чыгып кетти көбү.
When we drank those types of teas and medicines, we did not feel good. We had kind of a pain in our bodies, and we had like red rashes all through our bodies.
Göz оорулар пайда болду.
Also, we had eye aches, eye problem, vision problems,
Бут оорулар,
and pain in the leg,
nerv оорулар.
and nerve illnesses.
Анан ал бияктагы сайган ийнелер да бар да.
And about the injections,
Негизи бул байкашыбызча ошону ичкенден көбү баягы жоошуу, кеп тынч отуруп калат кишилер. Баарыбыз эле жоошуп калдык деп айтып жүрдүк. Сураган киши жок. Ошо дарыларды ичкенден кийин укол койгондан кишилер жоош болуп калат.
So I think that when we, especially the injections, when we take it, that it would help you to calm down, not to be, very like nervous or fearful, but it helped us to calm down, and this is what they expect us to hear from us.
Chinese giving dark canal.
And sometimes when we drink those tea, they took like blood again from us. This is how it was.
I'd also just add, to allow easier translation, the questions can sort of be asked in, rather than one long question, sort of in parts. Yes, of course.
This is a question kind of as much to you and to Ethan as it is to Joseph. I worked in the Reagan administration and saw how fax machines helped bring down the mighty Soviet Union because there was a capacity to break the wall, to tear down the wall. And I'm asking you what it would mean if the United States made it a major priority to bypass the firewalls that keep silence inside of what happens in China, in Xinjiang, in Wuhan, and elsewhere. What do you think the effect would be if people in China who had smartphones had as much access to you and us to them as if they were in a Starbucks in Bethesda? Should that be a major United States initiative? And if so, what the effect of that in your judgment would be?
Yeah.
A friend in need is a friend indeed.
That's a very interesting question. It seems to me that if such an initiative is possible, then the United States has a moral obligation to do this. And I would absolutely agree that all efforts should be made to disseminate true information about the world, about the actions of China's leadership, about the kind of oppression they've subjected Joseph and Julie and millions of others to, and the horrific crimes of the Chinese Communist Party, absolutely. I think that it will be challenging to do. In some sense, fax machines actually are probably still the easiest way to get information into a place like China, where so much effort has been put into controlling what goes on the internet. But I trust that the United States and many of the people here that work in high levels of government are innovative, and hopefully they'll come up with solutions. I'm not sure what they are, but we definitely have to try. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Congressman Smith has a question. I think we only have time for, that's our last question. Please, Congressman Smith.
Years ago, Paulden Gyatso, a Buddhist monk, was testifying at one of my hearings, and he couldn't get through the House security because he brought a cattle prod that was used against Tibetans, Buddhists, in prison. You mentioned the chair, you mentioned the use of various injections and pills. I wonder, are there other tortures? Marco Rubio and I had a hearing, we heard from a Uyghur woman who talked about electrical current being used on her. And secondly, does the propaganda, or has the propaganda and the daily dose of their lies, what impact does that have on people when they're being simultaneously tortured, deprived of sleep, and everything else? Did any of your fellow inmates break?
Yes, there are like different tools besides the tiger chair. One of the way to punish, to discipline you is they do not feed you.
su vermeyeceğiz ama
They may not give you water.
mancasına asıp koyup çalalım.
Sometimes they hang you from your thumb.
Cana turgusu koyup da tamamında başım.
And they put your hand behind your neck and put you against the wall and they make you to stay there for a long time.
Bu cezalar hiç kaçan gündüz tünde bölünmüyor. Tünde de cezalar.
And these kind of tortures can happen at any time. It can be during the day, it can be at night.
Bu cezalarda görgönden gün anın içinde kişileri ayvay. Ümitsiz döndü. Kıynaldı.
When people go through these kind of tortures, people get become hopeless.
Yaş kollarının çaşları düşüp gitti.
And even young people, they started losing their hair.
Çaşları ağarıp gitti.
And they got gray hair in a short time.
Ümit çok olsun.
And just hopelessness in them. This is what I know.
Okay, I'm sorry, no more time for questions. Thank you so much, Joseph.
This concludes the event, but we will probably take some quick pictures up here. And obviously, if anybody wants to hang around, we can chat afterwards, okay? Thank you very much for coming. We appreciate it.
Exactly, yeah. Do not leave without, because he's got your evidence, 10,000
I just texted him.